Hi everyone, welcome back to this YouTube channel. I'm Sola Joy and we have been looking at singleness in different areas of it, from God's plan for singleness and enjoying it, and how to think about sex as a Christian single, and just a variety of topics. And recently we've been looking at relationships, and we've looked at relationships with couples and getting sound advice from couples, and also family, developing healthy relationships with family. And this week we're looking at relationships with the opposite sex. So let's just jump straight in. Often as singles, and particularly as Christian singles, I think there can be a lot of questions about how to relate to the opposite sex, especially when you get to an age where you're marriageable material or whatever. And those questions often go unanswered because we just don't ask those questions. And the whole thing can just cause a whole lot of awkwardness, really. So I'm going to talk about three different views of relating to the opposite sex, and talking about what I think, in my opinion, is a healthy way of looking at each of these three things. So hopefully this video can provide some food for thought. I don't know necessarily if it will provide answers, but I thought it was good to speak of these topics. So first, I'm going to lay out the three different ways of relating to the opposite sex, or the three views of how to relate to the opposite sex. Now, the first is that we don't, as in there is no way of a guy and a girl being able to establish a good, healthy friendship. That's the first view and the route that some people take. The second is those who don't know how to have a completely platonic relationship with a person of the opposite sex, because all they know is flirtation. Whenever you interact with the opposite sex, there is some kind of flirtation that's involved. The third is those for whom the thought of interacting with the opposite sex makes them squirm, and there's everywhere they look, there's sexual tension, and it's like eye contact will tie them to the person for life. So let's speak about these three views. So the first is that guys and girls cannot be friends. It just can never work. It always leads to something more, etc. And to this point of view, I would respond that I firmly believe that what we have in Christ is stronger and better than what we have without Christ. And so God gave everyone, or most people, siblings. He instituted it in the family system. And if he gave us siblings naturally, and that if we're completely able to have platonic relationships with our natural blood siblings, then to me, it stands to reason that in Christ, we should be able to have completely platonic relationships with our spiritual siblings, because what we have in Christ is better. It is stronger than what we have with our blood family. I guess I'm emphatic about this because I think it's important for us not to lower our standards of what relationships can be, because there's such richness to be had from people of the opposite sex as well as people of the same sex. And I'm not saying that there should be no boundaries in these relationships, but let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, because it will require wisdom, but that's not to say that that cannot be done. We are first and foremost brothers and sisters in Christ. That's what God made us. He made us a part of his family, even before we are husband and wife or friends or whatever. We're brothers and sisters in Christ. So to me, that means that a healthy relationship can be had. And one thing to say then is also that it's important to be honest with oneself as to how one feels in that relationship, and to do so prayerfully, wanting to honor the other person and wanting to guard our hearts at the same time. And those two things are super important. And I think as we go about relationships prayerfully, God will lead us in the way that we need to go whether we need to take some distance, whether we can allow ourselves to share certain things. God will give us wisdom. But I personally don't believe that means that there is no room for a friendship with the opposite sex. So that's number one. Number two is relationships that are constantly flirtatious. I think it can be tempting to flirt or to flirt back with someone, anyway, because it feels good to know that someone is thinking about you or interested in you. And there is that whole aspect of it, but flirtation in its nature has a lot to do with playfulness and joking. The whole point is that the person doesn't tell you things directly, but goes around it in a way that insinuates things, and there are a lot of innuendos. That's the whole point of flirting. And I speak about this because I don't know if you've ever been around a person whom you see can never be serious. And this is often an indication that the person might lack a bit of confidence in themselves. And although this is not always the case, constant flirtation often shows that someone lacks the maturity to have a serious conversation and say, this is how I really feel about you. This is what I really want to tell you. And I want to push back against that, because if a person is really serious about you, then you want them to be able to seriously tell you that that is the case. And flirtation kind of circumvents that so that they can just kind of be playful about it until maybe one day someone just says, okay, what are you really thinking? Because I don't understand. So the reasons for flirtation often come from lack of confidence or lack of security. Sometimes people just flirt because they're bored. You're bored and you need to talk to someone, so you flirt so you can feel validated. And thirdly, as mentioned before, just immaturity. If you see someone that you're interested and you find something super rare and extremely valuable, you take it seriously, and not doing so shows that you lack the maturity to differentiate what is really valuable and what isn't. However, don't hear me say that flirtation in and of itself is bad. I think it's fun to be able to have playful conversation with someone that you're committed to, but as a single, flirting with every other person does not fall into that category. I think it's unhealthy to have flirtation as a base for a relationship, because by definition, you don't know what the person actually means. When you have a base where someone has told you what they really feel for you and what this relationship really is, then there's means to actually flirt because you know what basis you're standing on. That makes sense. Now, the third category is awkward avoidance. And I must be the first to say that of all these three categories, I probably fall into this one. And so there's so many reasons for this awkward avoidance. And sometimes it's because we're not interested and we just want to avoid the situation where we just have to say, listen, I'm not interested. Another case of awkward avoidance might come because you just don't want to hurt someone's feelings. Sometimes you avoid them because you're actually afraid that you might start to like them and you don't want to. And another case is just being insecure and feeling like, I don't know what to say to this person. This person makes me feel weird, and so I don't know what to say. And quite honestly, if you look at them, the flirtatious person and the person who runs away in awkward avoidance actually are doing the same thing. They're doing so out of some kind of insecurity, some kind of immaturity that leads them to not go straight to the point and either flirt or just avoid. I think if we want to get better at community, at healthier relationships with the opposite sex, then we can't avoid them, whether by flirtation or by running away. And maybe we won't always have the right words or know what to say, but sometimes it takes a situation that challenges you to cause you to think about it and think, okay, why do I actually not want to speak to this person? Or why do I not want to be with them, so I'm avoiding them so that I won't like them? It takes uncomfortable situations for us to learn how to speak the truth in love. It requires you to be honest with yourself. It may require you to say no, or to turn someone down, or to be firm, or to be direct. And none of those things are necessarily bad. And on the other hand, it may require you to be vulnerable and to say how you really feel, to risk, to take a leap of faith, and to take the mask off. But I strongly believe that as we learn how to do these things with God's grace and say, okay, this kind of makes me feel a bit nervous or anxious, but I'm going to face it and I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to try and speak the truth in love. I'm going to try and really dig deeper and find out, why does this situation make me feel this way? I believe that our community will be richer and stronger because of that. And ultimately, there is no such thing as an inherently awkward situation. Awkward comes from how you perceive something and then how you react to that thing as a result of it. So you could think of something that 5 years ago you found super awkward and that now you think nothing of. The situation didn't change, but your perspective of it did. So I want to encourage you to think about these situations and realize that they're only as awkward as I make them. This week, if there's anything or relationships or someone from the opposite sex that you've been actively running away from, I would encourage you to face the situation first in prayer and then potentially with the person or someone that you trust, and talk to them about the situation and ask God for wisdom as to how to be real with a person. Well, that's it for me. I hope that this has been helpful in some way. I'm not sure it provided answers necessarily, but maybe just food for thought on how we can interact with the opposite sex in a healthy way. Feel free to share any thoughts, comments that you might have in the box below. Have a good week.